Now, if we look at data center, which is driving demand at the moment with AI, we can see that demand for energy for data center is really moving up. We expect 2.5 times by 2030, and that translates into lithium carbonate demand also. So we can see 2025, we were talking around 300,000 tons LCE demand for data center, and we expect that demand to grow up to 1 million tons a year within the next 4 years, so which is very soon.
What you will hear from me is mainly structural geology driven, because I'm a structural geologist by formation, and been spending my entire career, I guess, looking at deformed rocks and trying to model them in 3D.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for Critical Element Lithium's inaugural 6th event. Today, we're joined by CEO Jean-Sébastien Lavallée and Director of Exploration Ken Williamson. But before we begin, please note that this is a live event. To make the most of it, we always encourage you to ask questions in the chat. As always, this event is being recorded and will be available shortly after we conclude. With that said, Jean-Sébastien and Ken will lay the foundation with a presentation, and then we'll kick off the Q&A session. So, gentlemen, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you, Kyle.
Thanks,
Good morning, everyone. So we'll start with the presentation. So Ken, let you turn the page. So usual disclaimer, you can see it on the website and the presentation on the website also. So if we start with critical element vision, really we want to become a responsible lithium supplier for the EV market and energy storage system industry. And we want to take the opportunity of the Rose Lithium Tantalum project, which is the most advanced project in the corporation. But always like to mention also that we own more than 1,000 square kilometers with a lot of potential for new discovery, even for lithium or polymetallic minerals. Our project located in Quebec, James Bay, good infrastructure in place. We have also agreement with the Cree Nation with an IBA that was formalized in 2019. Important to mention, Rose Lithium project also received decision statement from the federal authorities and global certificate of authorization from the provincial government. Next. So if we look at corporate structure, 232 million shares out, market cap around 100 million, management owned close to 5%, and we have coverage from 5 firms. We'll talk a bit about the lithium market. So if we look, the main market remain EV. We're looking at 25. Overall, we're talking around 22 million units sales around the world. Still growing 30% year to year. But obviously, when we look at the second box, we can see that the China represents more than 60% market share with 30% growth. What we're seeing now is European market is still growing now at over 30%, but represent 20% of the market share. And North America obviously is a bit lower with 10% market share, mostly Quebec, BC, California, with a 12% growth. Now, if we look at data center, which is driving demand at the moment with AI, we can see that demand for energy for data center is really moving up. We expect 2.5 times by 2030, and that translates into lithium carbonate demand also. So we can see 2025, we were talking around 300,000 tons LCE demand for data center, and we expect that demand to grow up to 1 million tons a year within the next 4 years, so which is very soon. So if we look at how these things translate, so if we look at the top left box, we can see again 25, around 22 million unit sales in the EV market. But what is interesting to look is what is the expectation for 2030, 2035. So if we look at the bottom box on the left, we can see that 25 was the market shares of around 23% for EV, but we expect this to increase to 40% by the next 4 years. If we look then in terms of data center and energy storage units, we can see that from 2020 up to 2025, there is a substantial growth in that sector. And looking at 2030, we can see that that demand will increase significantly from 300 gigawatt up to 800 gigawatt. So what is important for us is what that means in terms of lithium. So if we look at the top right chart, we look at 25 in terms of supply demand. We were talking about 1.3 million tons LCE for 2025. And when we look at projection, by 2030, we're talking at 2.5 to 3 million tons of demand, which is a significant increase from now up to 2030. It's mainly the double in terms of demand coming. So we think with, let's say, the Rose Lithium project, which is having all the key permit in place, one of the most advanced project in North America, that we're very well placed to capture that demand. Next. So if we look at the critical element portfolio, more than 1,000 square kilometers, you can see the pink star is the Rose Lithium Tantalum project. And just on the west of it, so on the left, you can see a small bubble, blue bubble. That's the Rose West discovery, which we are drilling at the moment, a 10,000 meter drill program. And just the south part is what we call the Nemaska Belt, which cover more than 100 kilometers over the Nisk Break, and which also hosts the Nisk and New Lion Zone discovery made by Power Metallic, in which we still own 20% carry interest. So if we look at the key things that have been achieved in terms of milestone for the Rose Lithium project, IBA being formalized in 2019, the decision statement with the federal government in 2021, the global certificate of authorization with the provincial government, restoration plan in place, approval for the displacement of the power line, the feasibility study that been upgraded in 2023, the mining lease is in place also for the project, land use lease for the key facilities, which include industrial pad, waste and tailing pad, and storage pad, and also the work camp lease is also in place. Over the last year, we also received a conditional contribution from the CMIF for 20 million for the project construction for the substation. And we also have in hand a conditional support letter from a leading institution for up to 115 million US in long-term debt. So if we look at the key numbers from the feasibility study upgrade in 2023, we're talking about the 17 years mine life project, a 2.2 billion after tax NPV, and a 65.7% IRR. The capex to build the project, 471 million US, in which what we're looking, let's say, to complete in project financing is around 550 million, which include financing fees and interest over the debt during the construction period. Cost to produce spodumene from the study, around $650 a ton. And as of today, if we look at today lithium spodumene price, we've seen again increase this morning. We're talking at over $2,300 a ton. So very strong economic here. So now we'll talk a bit more about the exploration. I also want to introduce Ken that joined the corporation recently and involved in all the exploration as Director Exploration. So if we look at the next slide, Ken, yep. We have really two packages. There's the Rose package, which is more lithium focused with the Rose lithium deposit and the Rose West zone, which we're currently conducting a 10,000 meter drill program. And there's also the Nemaska Belt package, which is more focused on polymetallic mineralization, on which we also did love work over the summer, and where the Lion Zone being discovered by Power Metallic. So Ken, I will let you jump in with, no, you can go on the next slide.
All right.
Next one. Yep. So here, Ken, I let you jump in from.
So the floor is mine. Yep. Thank you, Jean-Sébastien. Just a quick 10 seconds of who I am. For those who don't know me, what you will hear from me is mainly structural geology driven. Because I'm a structural geologist by formation, and been spending my entire career, I guess, looking at deformed rocks and trying to model them in 3D. So my main implication here with Critical Element is to take those skills and knowledge that is structural geology and 3D modeling and try to apply that to whatever we'll be doing. And the start of it was with Rose West. So what I'm going to do now is basically presenting you guys the different slides that we have presented in the press release that was released a couple of weeks back prior the beginning of our drilling program. And then I'll represent the same exact images, but in a 3D context, directly live in Leapfrog after I'm done with the static images. So as Jean-Sébastien was mentioning, Rose West is located tens of kilometers west of Rose, which is a known lithium deposit. Rose West shared the same characteristics as Rose. So whatever we see there is not a big surprise, accordingly to Jean-Sébastien and the other geos that are used to this project. I'm new, so I have everything to learn here in terms of pegmatite mineralization and spodumene-rich rocks and things like that, but it doesn't matter on the structural geology of this. So now, Rose West, very, very similar to Rose. So what is Rose West? Well, it's a pegmatite-hosted deposit full of spodumene, those pegmatites, when they are mineralized. And those pegmatites are hosted themselves within gabbros, which are themselves hosted within granitic rocks. So it's a sequence of developing intrusive within an intrusive, and then at the later stages of the geological story there, those pegmatites got into place within preferentially the gabbros, and that's due to a competency contrast between the granitic host rock and those mafic gabbros. So primary target, we're looking for them gabbros all over the place here in the area. And lucky for us, them gabbros are flat for the most part, so it's not difficult to find where they are on surface. They're below us. So the key question becomes, at what depth are we going to find them? So and it leads us to what are we trying to reach as objectives here for that exploration project or program that we're running now. Well, first and foremost, it's going to be expanding the mineral resource, or I should call this a mineral inventory that we have at Rose West right now. And that inventory is based on a few, well, how much was it? 25-ish holes that were drilled in 2024 that came back with a decent footprint. We'll have images about this in a short while, but decent footprint of, if my memory is correct, was something like 350 meters by 450 meters, something like that as a footprint initially. And what's really cool about Rose West is the intersection we get of pegmatites appears to be thicker and richer, more lithium content than what we have at Rose. So which is kind of cool in itself. It seems that the satellite deposit has a chance to become richer and bigger, perhaps, than the main deposit that we have at this stage. So focusing on expanding that mineral inventory around the Rose West discovery, which involves obviously confirming continuity of the geology and mineralization, and specifically focusing on the east and west of that zone. I'll get to it a little bit better in about a minute from now. And second objective is to execute that 10,000 meter drill program at Rose West. and all of this, that new meterage, in order to expand the zone, confirm the zone, and end up with a mineral resource estimate by the end of this year would be the plan. If we go back to historical results that we got in 2024, pretty impressive. I'm not going to read through that entire list, but when you see over one, most of the time 1.5% lithium, and a fair amount of tantal in there, it makes it very attractive when you compare to what Rose is with all the permitting and pre-fees and whatsoever else. You look at them numbers, they look almost better than what Rose is. So the only thing basically we need is to confirm that this that we have on screen is continuous in a much bigger size than what it is right now. So that plan view shows a little bit what's what in terms of dimension. The yellow square is that 350 by, or 70, I guess, to be more precise, by 450 meter footprint that we have. And all of this is infilled with those 24, I believe, to be precise, drill holes that were drilled in 2024. So we'd be already ready to initiate a mineral resource estimate on that small block, but it's not very big. So that's why we're drilling this. So essentially, we've defined two sectors, I guess, the east sector and the, let's call it the central one. The central one is very easy, and as you can see, there's a grid displayed on screen there. So because of the flat attitude of those pegmatites, it's very conveniently drilled on a grid. So you basically set up a grid at whatever spacing you want in the field, and you basically drill a hole at every intersection of grid lines as it's displayed here. So we've selected a grid pattern of 200 meters spacing, or 100 meter spacing for the most part, and 200 meter spacing on the eastern target. So what's happening here is, we have the core, which is that yellow spot, and what we intend doing with the core area is very simply drilling around and expanding as we go, basically. No matter what ways we'll be using to do this will be depending on field condition and if the ground is ready for us and things like that. But essentially, we want to cover this entire red square here, and that would expand the zone by something like 250 meters all around it. So we'd have a decent size here, almost a kilometer long by a little over 1 kilometer in footprint there. So that would quadruple, if not times 5, the size of that footprint that we have. And we have good hopes too, based on the geology that we know of, and I'll get back to this in Leapfrog in a short while, that the whole thing here is continuous towards the east. And as a reminder, getting towards the east will lead us towards Rose at one point in a pretty much linear way. From the results that we had in 2024, there's a definite dip towards the east. So it's gently plunging at about 10 to 15 degrees in that direction. So the east target area we anticipate to be a little deeper than what we had in the west or core area. So the other structural component that we've focusing on right now are those two dashed lines that are cutting across from northwest to southeast here. Those are interpreted faults that we've interpreted from the MAG, but also from the drilling done in 2024, where we see very badly deformed rocks just before entering the mineralized zone. It seems that there is some sort of a shear or fault zone, let's call it a structure, impacting and affecting the mineralized body. So what does it do? We'll have a look at this in section view now. We're looking at line I. If I go back here, line I would be the northernmost section, I guess, of what is known as mineralization right now. So what we can see is a bunch of good results, I guess, that were drilled a couple of years back. But what I want to put emphasis on here is the slight changes in dip that we are observing from that historical drilling. So, for instance, from those hits here, the trend appears to be a little steeper, as it's shown globally here in the general section. And at one point, it seems to become flatter again. And that, our interpretation right now is because there is a structural corridor impacting the pegmatite geometry in this area. And the result is having the pegmatite rising up, it seems, when it passes through that structural corridor. So I'm not yet in a position to document better what is happening in terms of timing relationship, timing of deformation versus the pegmatite emplacement and things like that. All of those crunchy details will come in the next weeks, I presume. So if we look at the other section, which is right in the core, right, that's line E. If I go back, would be line E here. Well, the southernmost, I guess, or near to the core of the zone. We'll see the exact same geometry happening, but much more pronounced that time. Between hole 14 and 15, you can see a major drop vertically down of about 100 meters. So that geometry has been resolved in 3D. What I mean by this is we've designed the intersection lineation between that pegmatite and the projection of those fault traces. And we're now following that intersection line to better decide, I guess, at which depth each of them drill holes has to be drilled to make sure that we're not missing the zone that we're looking for. Now, that being said, this is based on data from a couple of years back. As good structural geologists would know, if you observe something in some places, if you can lock into a repetition, well, please copy paste that same geometry all over the place and test it. So that's pretty much the approach that we're having now. We've identified on the mag another fault or series of structures a little bit further east of where we saw and where we know there are structures or structural corridor there. And we've basically interpreted other faults to be repeating themselves at about every 200 meters or so. And then each and every time we'll cross that zone, we're anticipating a little bit of a drop down on the pegmatite interception. So that remains to be seen. Again, we'll come back to you guys with more crunchy details once we have compiled all of that data and making sure that our hypotheses are working right. So the last static image here will be equivalent to what we could call the long view, but it's not really. If I go back here, we're looking at section 12, which is perpendicular to the two previous images that we've seen. Usually we'd see a very different image, but if I switch on that other cross section, nothing much has changed except that the trend of them faults now is now reversed as compared to the other image. It's a visual artifact. It's just the cut, I guess, giving us an apparent trace of those faults in there. But again, even if it's a trace, we can still see that little waving that I've been mentioning. And in between them faults corridor, what we get is a slight variation in geometry, becomes a little steeper to become flatter again. And then we anticipate becomes steeper, flatter, etc. And probably it goes there like since forever, maybe reaching Rose at one point, who knows? It's really far out, 10 kilometers away, but we're already hoping to be able to cover about 1.5. So we'll see. We'll keep you guys posted. Just before we get into that other section, let me please just bring back the same kind of images here, but live in 3D, and I'll just very quickly browse through it in 3D and just perhaps show you a couple more crunchy details, and then I'll wrap it up. So same image again, Rose West. I'm going to zoom in at Rose West here and just turning off that map. We kind of see the same image that we've seen. And just to put things in perspective, I'll just flip the model and do a complete spin, and you will be able to appreciate a little bit of the modeling that we're doing now, and the location of them images that we've just seen. So let's start with a view directly north, and I'll explain what we see on screen as we go. So we kind of see the two sections getting through the model. What we got on screen, everything that is reddish colored is good stuff. So pegmatite dikes, epilitic dikes, easily recognizable in core and things like that, therefore easily modelable. So and everything that is modelable will do. So that's that. And in gray, those two panels are the faults that we've interpreted from the kink or the drop down that we see. So now I'll just orient the camera here so we can kind of look in between those two faults. And I'll just clean up the image here so it's less blurry. And I'll eventually be able to show you in here the past drilling and what we get out of this. So I'm just going to turn off those sections. They kind of blurried away a bit. What we can see before I turn on the real drilling done in 2024, this is the grid drilling pattern that I've been referring to. So basically, it's a very simple approach. We've decided on surface where the start point would be, and then we've basically imposed on each of them drill holes the same azimuth and plunge all over the place. And what we're trying to target is that flat panel designed in red here. As you can see also, there are some drill holes that are extended way down there. So most of them drill holes are targeting the zone, and once we reach the zone, it's so easily recognizable in the core that we give ourselves another extra 10 meters and we stop the drill hole there. So we're sure that we've gone through it. That way we're saving tons of money, not drilling for nothing. However, there are maybe close to a dozen of holes that we intend voluntarily to push way further. The reason being is we're anticipating, or we would like to verify, not anticipating nothing, sorry, but we would like to verify if underneath that main pegmatite, if there's another one. So because if there is one crack opening to allow a pegmatite to get in place there within that gabbro, the same principle could rinse and repeat in multiple places. So with that exploration program, we want to test that as well. And should it come back positive with a second zone, then we would probably review our drilling strategy to take that into account. Again, we'll keep you guys posted on any new discoveries we'll make if we do. Now, I think I'm going to end up probably very shortly with a couple things, one more detail about the structural geology, and then we'll look at the real drill holes from 2024. So here what we see is the main mineralization plane that has been projected to the east, to the south, north, etc. And now we can see our planning, the drilling planning, punching that surface as soon as we get out, ending the hole. And then the relationship with that gray surface, that gray fault, and the very slightly plunging intersection line that defines the intersection of both. So what we're using now is defining structural domains. So we end up with, let's call it a western domain, an eastern domain, and the central core. And we now are able to distinguish specific geometries that should be happening within that central core. So we're expecting pegmatites dipping down, becoming more subparallel to foliation perhaps, and things of that nature, versus on each side should be more quiet, with less deformation, flatter behavior. So that's the whole deal, I guess. Now, if we look at the detail of all this, where it's all coming from, let me just turn off a few things here. And what I'm going to keep is very simply the pegmatite core that we've been looking to. That was in yellow. I'll just keep it. It's in red now. So, but the yellow square basically is that red volume that we see on screen. So how has that been defined? Let me just pull out the drill holes. Geotech. I think it's that one here. And let me just put the legend here. So what we have here is badly colored. It was just for me to have a better visual. But what we see, those discs, is lithium oxide percent. So above 1 is those white discs, and above 1.5 would be gray, and above 2% is black. So I just wanted to color contrast with the red mineralized zone and not having hot colors mixing with this. So what we can see now is, based on the 2024 drilling, it is very, very obvious that we have that kink happening. That's the first thing I kind of saw observing the data very close to surface, in between or inside that core structural corridor or core in here, as you can see projected up on surface, and then slightly maybe 10 or 20 meters east of that, a sudden drop in the geometry. The zone is still there, very thick, very significant, as mineralized pegmatite, but simply diverging geometry. So if we look this view, well, we're now looking at a combined view, which is both showing that vertical drop, but we're also looking up plunge of that intersection lineation I was talking before. So what this view shows us is clearly we should have a western part here, very, very close to surface, that should follow actually that trend that we have on surface. So all of it here, sorry for the move of the camera, all of it in here should be relatively close to surface. We're expecting a drop down past that line. Mineralization is still there, slightly deeper, becomes thicker, becomes flatter, more horizontal in that portion. And as the mag appears to suggest, end up with the mag in here, and then I'm done, I swear, I promise. That fault corridor that we're interpreting from the drilling also shows up in the mag, we believe. If you look at the mag breaks between what's high mag versus low mag, it seems that there is a trend cutting across. It's very subtle, more obvious perhaps on that line in here. We see the sharp mag high being cut in here. And then if we copy paste, as I was mentioning, that distance over and over and over and over, let me just do this because I haven't done it so far. So it's now time. Just an end drawing. So we have that fault. We're interpreting this fault. This is based from drilling. And then if we were to copy paste that same distance all over the place, like this, for instance, then we would start recognizing what I believe is the structural grain in the area, where past each of these lines, we would expect a vertical displacement on the pegmatite. So far, what we see is a drop down. We may expect a rise up, depends on the geometry of them pegmatites. Them dikes will behave the way they want with respect to the local geology in and around where they get in place. So it's going to be a case by case, probably. But I do believe that we've put the finger on something that allows us to predict where things are going to be. And in that regard only, I believe for that very reason, we'll be doing a very, very good and well-defined drilling program because of that. So yes, conclusion here, it's a grid approach. So it looks like we don't have to think too much to drill a flat panel, but there is good science being done in the background, trying to use everything that we can to optimize that drilling and optimize the dollars being put in the ground. On that, I think I've covered pretty much what we're trying to do so far, unless I'm forgetting something. Did I forget something, Jean-Sébastien?
All good, Ken. It's all good. I think we can jump to the some of the questions.
No, it's great. I know the audience always loves when people demonstrate via leapfrog here. Thank you, Ken, and thank you, Jean-Sébastien. We have time for a few questions here, so let's dive in. Let's just look at the chat here. We have a couple
some
here
on the chat that we can maybe answer.
Yeah. Well, let's start with Roberts here. When do you expect to make public the first results of 2026 drilling campaign for Rose West?
Yeah, the drill program is on the way. I will expect, depending on how fast the lab are turning assays, sometime by the end of March, we hope to get some results out.
In regard to Emily's question, it has received a couple likes. 3D modeling is great for but what are you able to share with without obviously drill results? With the 3D modeling, can you approximate a volume/tonnage of the core zone on Rose West?
Oh, I think on this we need to be careful not to. Let's say
yeah. But my general answer is that's exactly why I believe all projects should be be pushed in 3D model or in a 3D model form right away. Because remember, guys, we're spending money in the ground for one reason and one reason only, is to increase the size of that discovery. So yeah, obviously, I'm not going to talk about numbers. You guys can do back of the napkin calculations if you want. But if you look at the footprint that we're anticipating, it needs to be confirmed, obviously. But you take at any footprint, any dimension, and then you look at the average thickness of that, anyone can end up with calculating a volume. You apply a density, you get tons. You apply a percentage of lithium, you get, you know, some sort of back of the napkin resource. I'm not going to tell those numbers, but the 3D modeling work that we do live while we're drilling and updating that model while we're drilling and using this model to propose or tweak the next drill holes is exactly trying to reach that goal, which is increasing resource live. So those things will remain internal, but I'm a resource geologist, so everyone should be expecting that I will have a block model ready for our internal use at all time. So that's my goal, my role. I've been hired to do that, and we'll be using that block model to drill better and find opportunities, find new targets, infill drilling them targets and everything. And eventually we'll render that public by initiating a 43-101 process. But nothing prevents us to do that resource work internally. And honestly, I've been doing that all my career. Like, you build a resource model and then you drill it. That's the reason why we do this, you know. So yeah, back of the napkin calculation. Sorry, I'm not gonna get into it, Jean-Sébastien.
No, what's that, Ken?
But you know, footprint is a footprint, thickness is a thickness. I mean, multiply two numbers one by one, nothing illegal doing that. But I ain't going to do the maths.
No, well said. Simon's wondering, and I understand you're looking to increase the size, and we were talking about this for the majority of the call, was expanding the footprint. However, why don't you guys remind us how big the current discovery is, which you already have fully permitted project for?
Yeah, for the Rose lithium deposit, we have a reserve of 26 million tons, and total resource is 32 million tons.
And sorry for me asking the question, Jean-Sébastien, but what's the footprint dimension of Rose?
Rose is 1.4 by 800 kilometers. 800 meters by 1.4.
Okay. So
the average thickness is a bit lower. Yeah.
So essentially, maybe it will answer a bunch of questions. If we were to compare Rose with Rose West in terms of dimension, the image we see on screen, the red square, is essentially the dimension of what Rose is with the permits and things like that, right? So Rose West is that yellow square right now. Well, essentially that red dotted line is the solid, the object that we've been looking at earlier. And we're anticipating, based on continuity, obviously it remains to be seen in core with our own eyes, but based on knowledge that we've gathered in that core area, and if we're lucky and it's projected in all direction, then it could be very easy, to end up with a decent sized footprint, much bigger than what we have now. So yeah, in terms of size comparison, Rose West has the potential to become as big as Rose, essentially, I would say. Great. Well, I'm new with the project. Jean-Sébastien could correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what I kind of see with my scientific eyes here.
Thank you, Ken. We have time for about one or two more questions here. Robert joined us at the beginning of the call, and Ken, you mentioned the potential for lithium all over the property, really. Are you actively looking for others, or are you focusing only on West for the time being?
Actually, the focus with the drill program is on the Rose West zone, but we know that there's other occurrence on the property. We've been doing some surface work over the last summer and previous summer there's other occurrence, but that's the zone that being drilled in winter 24, where we already see some continuity and good grade, good width. Eventually, we might look at other target too, but there's other target.
Yeah. And if I may complement that, Jean-Sébastien, you had mentioned very briefly a second phase of our drilling program this year, which will be the Nemaska Belt itself. And we're talking there 120 kilometers of playground. That's a stretch. It's the Cadillac break, guys, from Rouyn-Noranda to Val-d'Or, basically. So you can imagine how many targets we'll have in there and things like that. What I'm trying to say now, getting back to Rose and Rose West, with that context, in the next weeks, I guess, we'll be in a position to present what we want to do in terms of Nemaska Belt drilling and exploration approach and things like that. At that time, I'll give you a scoop, probably. But at that time, what I'm going to be presenting is the overall picture that will be, the entire thing that includes Rose West, Rose, Nemaska Belt, the different showings that we have all along Nemaska Belt, and what are my hypotheses on why are they there. What's the explanation to explain why is Nisk where Nisk is, and why is Lion where Lion is, and where Lamar is where Lamar is, and where Caumont, Vaïquette prospects are, along that belt. And I think, I'm talking a bit through my hat, but I think overall what we will understand at one point is there is maybe a relationship in terms of global geology here, or general geology. There's maybe some sort of a dynamic happening between location of Rose West, location of Rose, and what's happening further south. If we follow those major structural corridors, again on the screen here, that fault corridor is from northwest to southeast. Well, it's a long stretch, but if you take that same orientation and shoot it within the Nemaska Belt, what's happening at that intersection between the Nisk trend and those northwest, southeast trending structures? So I'll leave it as that, but it's going to be, at the end of the day, a fully integrated geological picture that we want to put together. And that will eventually answer, I guess, the question, what's happening between Rose and Rose West, because that area is going to be part of it. We will want to know and interpret what's happening between Rose West, Rose, and south of that. What's the connection between the Nemaska Belt and things like that. So it's going to be a very, very fun year, very busy year, but very fun in terms of goals and challenges, in terms of science behind this. It's going to be a friggin' great year for sure.
I think that's a great note to leave it on, Ken. Thank you so much to both of you for the presentation, as well as everyone that submitted questions. Apologize, we're running out of time here. We can't get to them all, but I will pass it back to you, Jean-Sébastien, for any closing remarks before we wrap up here.
Yeah, thanks, Kyle. Thanks, everyone, to joining today. Was happy to provide this kind of a more detailed explanation on the Rose West drill program. I will say thanks, Ken, because that's what you did. And hopefully we get good results out of that drill program. And we're confident that, let's say, we'll continue to make progress also with Rose, with lithium price moving back in the right direction. And we'll keep you posted on any progress. Great. Thank you very much.